Hello Angela Anaconda fans, I'm AmazzonKane and I'm here with the creator of Angela Anaconda. This is Joanna Ferrone, person who has top billing, person who came up with the idea, and the person we're going to hear from today. So thank you so much again for doing this.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for asking me, AmazzonKane.
So Joanna Ferrone, when did you know you were going to be a writer?
I knew I was going to be a writer when I was in the second grade. And I wrote a story about a little girl who ate so many peanut butter and jelly sandwiches that she turned into one, and she was walking down the street and a horse ate her. And I was very impressed that the teacher liked my story so much that she sent me over to her friend at the library, the public library in Oyster Bay, New York, and to share my story with her. And her friend was equally impressed, so I thought, hey, I'm a writer. And the rest is history.
Oh, that's awesome. You've clearly been writing a lot since. You're very close to your artwork, particularly Fido Dido, if I'm correct.
Yeah, Fido is I consider him to be my son. He's my boy. I love Fido very much. He was kind of the result of me sitting with my friend Sue Rose after work, as we did for many years, because my office was right next to where she was working. We were great friends, and we'd meet after work at a local bar and have a drink and hang out with other pals of ours. And for a good year, I was saying to Sue, we've got to do something creative to put our point of view out there on the street. It was a time in New York City when Keith Haring was doing that, and there was a lot of wonderful art going on, Jean-Michel Basquiat, and a lot of art meets fashion in the club world, club area, where you'd walk down the hallway at the entrance and you'd go past a row of glass windows that each had a little booth behind them, and in that booth would be a different performance artist. And it was a mix of people wearing Comme des Garçons and Yoji and all kinds of great fashion that was available at the time, and is available still today, of course, but and then other people who were just poor, struggling artists and had hand-painted t-shirts or whatever. It was just such a cool mix of people and artists and fashion, and it was an exciting time in New York. It was pre-AIDS, and the sky was the limit. Everybody was just having fun and being creative and being free. And I didn't think about creating something to make a whole bunch of money. It wasn't about that. It's just like, Sue, we've got to, we would have our conversations, and we had a certain philosophy that we shared, and I was like, I want to put it out there. I don't want it to just sit here between you and I, or you and me. And she thought I was crazy, actually, and kept putting me off, but I kept insisting. And one day we're sitting in this bar, and there's a friend of mine, John, who was an adorable little blonde-haired gay boy, and Sue did a caricature of him on a beverage nap, and I noticed that everyone sitting around thought it was super cute. They really liked it. It was attractive to people. So I took the little napkin, and I was walking to work the next day, and I was like, this is our guy. His name is Fido. And we took it from there. And I never gave up. I never put a limit on what could happen with Fido. I thought anything could happen. And we got behind it with a passion, and so a lot of stuff happened that could not have been predicted. It was pretty exciting.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
And what parts of yourself have you put into Fido Dido, and what parts are in Angela Anaconda?
I would say that Fido is more my heart and soul guy, and Angela is more autobiographical in a sense. I was kind of Angela-like when I was growing up. I considered myself to be an instant adult. The minute I was out of the womb, I was, everyone's equal in terms of responsibility and authority.
And a staple in both of these characters is their very unique names. How did you come up with them?
Just popped into my head. In fact, with Angela Anaconda, I just liked the way it sounded. I wasn't thinking that an anaconda is a snake. I don't think I knew that an anaconda was a snake. So I think had I known that, the name probably would have been different, but it is what it is.
It's got a rhythm to it. And Angela Anaconda's origin story is a really interesting one. Yes, you've told me this before. Sorry to repeat. But what was the pitch process like, and what about it got the show greenlit?
Well, at the time, I was living in the West Village, and Fido was going strong, and kind of taking care of itself. And so being a creative entrepreneur, I wanted to find a new thing. And in the West Village, there's this famous cigar shop on the corner of Christopher Street and Hudson. And above that shop was a giant billboard for Tanqueray Gin, I think. And it was Mr. Somebody.
Mr. Jenkins.
Mr. Jenkins, right. And it was, the artwork was cut and paste collage. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I went to Sue, my wonderful artist partner, and I said, Sue, we got to do something like that. So we had a bunch of old photographs, and Sue took elements of those and married them with collage elements in a very clever way. And we tried to do a line of t-shirts with that artwork. It never really got anywhere, and I think probably what was missing there that was never missing with Fido and Angela is the real passion. It was kind of a commercial, let's do something different, distraction type of enterprise. But in any event, that was that. Then I decided that I was going to write up some kind of a show, a new, bunch of characters, with that idea of cut and paste in mind.
And Kablam approached you with that, right?
Well, what happened is I wrote a treatment called Family Values, and it was meant to be an adult thing. It was a family in the Midwestern suburbs who had a gay son and didn't know what the heck to do about it, and were just straight in a very funny way. And in any event, I wrote that up. I hadn't done anything with it. We got a call from Kablam, from the guys at Kablam, and they said, do you and Sue have anything that you want to pitch for our new project? We're doing, shorts and a compilation thereof, and we were wondering if you had something to offer. So, we said the only thing we've got right now is Family Values, and sent it over to them. And they called us in for a meeting and said, we love this, who did the writing? And I said, I did. And I was very proud that they were so appreciative of it in any event, and they loved the artwork. They loved Sue's artwork very much. So the guys liked Family Values, they liked the writing, they liked the artwork, everything was great, they said, but it's long format, we're not doing long format, and it's rather adult for our demographic. So take this tape, have a look at what we're interested in so far, what we're producing so far, and let us know if there's something that you want to contribute. So we took the tape back to the office. It was a videotape, VHS at the time. That's how long ago it was, kids. And I watched it, and I was just blown away at how interesting and original and creative it was. It was my kind of animation, to be sure. I've never been one to have a lot of appreciation for the kind of, pablum that is served to children, meant to talk down to their age level. And as I said before, I was an adult kid. So it insulted me that that thought of of talking down to children. I think they're a very important and very perceptive and like little sponges of an audience. They can learn so much, they can get so much, they can gather so much, they can understand so well. And many of the television shows that have been produced for them and continue to be produced for them have no appreciation of that. So this was something quite different. This was clever. It was original. It was not pandering in the least. And the show that I loved the best was called Sniz and Fondue. I think the name was changed after that, but at first it was Sniz and Fondue.
Still was. I grew up watching
Was
that.
it? Was it?
Yep.
Okay. In any event, it blew me away, and it inspired me so much that I turned off the TV, went into my office, closed the door, and a half an hour later came out with a rough draft of the Angela Anaconda show. So it was one of those lucky things where you're inspired and influenced by the right kind of material, and by the impetus of a real opportunity, that given to us by Nickelodeon, and you just you start hearing voices in your head and you just record it down. So that's what I did, and it was pretty easy because it was quite biographical, and as I've said before, it was a response to my conviction that so much TV that I grew up on in the 50s proposed this concept of a perfect white picket fence, perfect family, no dysfunction, everybody, normal, everybody coming back together after a little misunderstanding and never anything bad, really bad happening. I was like, that is just BS. I mean, that's not what life is like. I looked around my family, I thought, what's wrong with me? That things can be a lot more dicey in real life. So I wanted to do something that portrayed real life, and one of the main things that I wanted to tackle was this notion that everybody starts at the same starting line and finishes at the same finishing line, which I found to be patently not the case. So that's how I came up with, the arch nemesis Nanette, who had it all and who had absolutely unfair advantage, and Angela, and for Angela not to be bitter about it, but to do something about it that would satisfy, the discrepancy in her heart and mind.
Love that. So you'd say, my next question was, how much of the personality of the show is you and how much was Sue Rose, that say?
I feel like it was biographical to me. Sue Rose participated in every aspect of, she certainly had a lot to do with the creation of the art. She voiced the character of Angela, and she participated with me as an executive producer on all the scripts and the script reviews and what have you. I do say that where I see Pepper Ann as definitely having been Sue's baby, Angela Anaconda was my baby.
And speaking of Sue Rose voicing Angela, how was that decision made?
That decision was made because I think she had voiced the original thing for Kablam.
She did.
And so it was a natural concept to consider. I wasn't 100% in favor, but I didn't want to insult my friend. She has a terrific cartoon voice. I just didn't know whether that was going to be the right one for Angela per se. But our experience in casting a voice for Fido, for instance, when we did a bunch of interstitials for CBS, was that it's really, really hard sometimes to find the right voice. So it wasn't a battle that I chose to have, and we went with Sue.
Cool. Interesting.
Yeah.
And so since she did it for the Kablam shorts, the original series, I'd be curious, what happened in between the Kablam shorts and the official series? Were you pitching it around, or was it immediately picked up after they saw it on Kablam?
We were pitching it around, and you know, I would go to MIP TV and Cannes and what have you. I met a guy who had a Vancouver production company named Mainframe. Chris, somebody, I loved him. He was such a good guy. In any event, he introduced us to Decode, who he proposed as partners in the project. And then Chris and Mainframe dropped out because I guess they were having internal struggles that they hadn't anticipated. And we continued to negotiate a deal with Decode.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And speaking of the actual content in the show, I definitely saw queer personality come through in it, both with gender and sexuality, still in a very innocent kid way. And I've told you I'm LGBT. I see so much of my own experience in Angela and Annette's relationship and Angela herself. It's really the only show I feel like captures myself as a queer person. And knowing you're also LGBT, you really are a role model for me.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you.
Who are some of your queer role models, real, fictional?
Okay. Nobody who's listening to this will have heard of Liberace, I don't think.
I know
You know
Liberace. Yeah, I know Liberace.
Okay. Apparently when I was a little kid, like still crawling, I couldn't even walk yet. When Liberace was on our black and white TV, because there wasn't color TV at the time, horrors, believe it or not, I would crawl up to the TV and kiss it every time Liberace was on. So he, I would have to say, was my first gay role model hero figure.
Oh my gosh.
I loved him. So something was speaking to me. I don't know whether it was the chandeliers or... so that was the first one. Actually, when I was growing up, there were not a lot of role models available, not in the least. You know, I knew that I wanted to be a boy. I dressed like a boy. My parents were fairly indulgent about it until I was about maybe 8 years old. You know, everyone found it very funny and cute and what have you. And then it was decided that it was time for me to now be a girl, be a proper girl. And so a little bit of pressure was put on me. And I remember for Christmas, when I was 8 years old, I asked for a Tiny Tears doll. That was the toy that they were promoting on TV for girls. I did not like dolls. I didn't like them at all. But I knew that, you know, and I was very calculating as a child, I have to say, but I knew that that would make my parents happy because that was a girly thing to ask for. So I asked for it, and of course I got it. And I was like, oh, great, thank you, yay.
There's like the Fright Before Christmas where Angela wants snowshoes, but her brothers mistake it for a doll.
Exactly, exactly. You know your stuff.
I really love the show.
So in any event, I got the doll, that was fine, whatever. I took one for the team. And then my aunt and uncle from Connecticut arrived, and they gave me this big square box, and I opened it up, and inside was a regulation size basketball. And I swear to God, nobody ever in my life will ever, has ever, could ever give me a present that meant more to me than that basketball. It was the best present I ever got. And I didn't realize how much I needed that affirmation, you know, to just be who I was. You know, I didn't think in terms of queer. There was no, you know, social media. There was no Will and Grace on TV. You know, as I got older, the only role models available to me were, you know, Oscar Wilde and Gertrude Stein. That was it. Honestly, it was it. I grew up in a place where I didn't know anyone who was gay, nothing. And in a way, I'm kind of grateful for it because I feel like I didn't take on the burden of an identity that had anything to do with anybody or anything but me. I was myself. I was able to be myself. I wanted to be a boy so badly for such a long time that if it was this day and age, and if my parents were particularly progressive, I would have started taking hormones and stuff and become a boy. I'm so glad that I did not do that. I really am, because I'm very, very happy being who I am, how I am. It all is fine. And, you know, one thing that impressed me, because I knew this question was going to come up, and I was thinking about my travels to Japan, where it's a very patriarchal system, particularly in business. Women are much less elevated than men. And I perceived that as an American woman going over there for creative and business purposes, that I was treated as if I didn't have a gender. I wasn't treated like a man, I wasn't treated like a woman, certainly not like a Japanese man or a Japanese woman. I was treated as something other, and therefore, in my way of thinking, something unique to myself. And that was pretty cool. I liked it, you know? And so, you know, I appreciate how people are more strident these days about gender identification and all of that stuff. For me, I don't have any prejudice about it. I really don't care. And I don't feel, therefore, a need to identify myself as one thing or another thing or another thing. You know, I feel like I'm myself. And I feel like Angela would have felt exactly the same way. You know what I mean?
And it definitely comes through in very subtle ways in the show, such as her dog King being a girl but having a boy's name,
Yes.
or Angela being a masculine girl, Gordy Reinhardt being a feminine boy.
Right, right.
The fact that Angela never protests disliking wearing a dress or dolls, and Gordy's not so feminine that he can't do sports and or have a good relationship with his dad.
Yeah. Brian Boitano sports, but sports nonetheless.
He played hockey a couple times.
That's true.
He loves his dad. So in Angela, I definitely would be surprised if there were LGBT characters or characters later coming out finding themselves. Who, in your opinion, of the Angela Anaconda characters are LGBT?
Well, I'll put it to you this way. There is not a character on the whole show that couldn't turn out to be one thing or another, as far as I'm concerned, because I don't see any necessity to impose labels unless you take labels seriously, unless you think that that's something important. That only becomes important when you're dealing in a world of prejudice and oppression. But I have not, fortunately, encountered a whole bunch of that. Yeah, I went through it. You know, not coming out until I was 28 years old, because I didn't know what I was. You know, then I figured it out because a friend of mine provided a very good example. And so I suffered, for sure. And I feel for people who suffer from prejudice and misunderstanding and all of that. But I do feel that if we're going to move on, we need to accept acceptance. And of course push for equal rights and protections and what have you. But I'm not the person who's going to go out there and say, you know, I'm a lesbian, my name is Joanna Ferrone. You know?
Right.
That's not my way. And I don't think it's helpful or necessary. If it was necessary, I'd do it.
Oh, that's really thoughtful. And transitioning a little bit, since Angela Anaconda got much more exposure and much more publicity, actually, you know what? I think I'll switch to this one first.
Okay.
Angela Anaconda ultimately it is a very misunderstood show, especially today. And is there anything that you, as the creator, wish people understood about it better?
You know, that's another thing. Maybe I, hide my head in the sand, but I don't really follow, a lot of comments about the show or have a great awareness of any misunderstanding. I mean, I can imagine that because it's such a different kind of show that it probably provokes a lot of opinions.
It does.
And I think that's kind of a good thing. So I'd rather have a mix of good and bad than have nothing at all. And certainly I'd rather have a mix of good and bad than all bad. So you tell me, what are the general misgivings about the show?
Generally, honestly, there's a lot of people who do love it. For me, I always loved the revenge fantasies, and I know there's a worldwide fan base who's certainly related to Angela, the feelings of unfairness or dealing with bullying specifically.
Yeah.
Or just dealing in a very harsh world. And for me specifically, it was the anger part of it that I liked so much, and she was allowed to express it. As I was somebody who was bullied, unfortunately, by quite a few different girls in my life.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. But I wasn't ever allowed to be angry about it or express that, and that's what I loved so much about Angela.
Yeah.
And that's what, when I talk to more and more people, a lot of people really relate to that part. They love how unique it is. It's funny. It's really, really funny.
Yeah.
There's a lot of very good lines.
I think so too.
There's a lot of good lines, good slapstick. Say the biggest criticisms, it's mostly the art style and Sue Rose's voice. Those are the big two.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I said, a voice is a very, very hard thing to get right. I would have preferred a different voice, but I certainly didn't want to disagree with everybody else in opposition to my dear friend. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people who like the voice, so it's all good. It's all good.
There definitely are.
But what was the other thing that you said?
The main thing was the art style.
Oh, the art style. I love the art style.
I do too.
If you don't like the art style, I can't help you. I mean, the art style was the art style. It was deliberately done to emphasize, I think, the mix of real and imaginary. Which really all of the characters are based on photographs of actual people. Some of the characters are the same person manipulated in a different way.
A lot of it
so it's interesting from that point of view. But as I said, I mean, I loved that Mr. Jenkins ad. I thought it was arresting and new, even though it's not new.
Monty
and
Python.
Fun. Yeah, I liked it. So there you have it.
Awesome.
Please some of the people some of the time.
That's true. And there are more and more people coming out saying, I love this show. It's really funny. It is unique. Nothing else looks like it.
Yeah.
And I thought, all right, now I can go to this one. Since Angela Anaconda got a lot of exposure from being tied with the Digimon movie, that's how a lot of people in the United States knew about it.
Yeah.
How did that tie-in come together?
I'm not 100% sure. I think it was that Fox Family had something to do with Digimon, and since they had adopted Angela for their U.S. Broadcast, it was a tie-in that made sense to them. I don't know. It was the corporate powers that be. It had really nothing to do with me.
Okay. So internet, if you're gonna yell at somebody, yell at the studio. And so you're still interested in making a TV show for Fido Dido.
I am. I've always been. Never give up on that.
Perfect. I'll definitely be watching.
Excellent.
What's that going to look like?
Well, it's going to be conventional animation for all those who don't like cut and paste. Sorry. And I apologize to all those who do. But Fido is more of a cartoon character in his origins, and that's not going to change. I think it's going to be a show about Fido and his group of friends, and Fido's kind of philosophy of life. That's kind of see no evil, hear no evil. He takes whatever challenge he encounters and finds a way around it. He doesn't force the issue. He makes the best of the issue and comes up with creative solutions to cartoon living. And
Fido's for Fido. Fido's
Fido's
against
for
no one.
Fido, Fido's against no one. And like we used to say, it's an exclusive club that everyone can join.
It's really nice.
Yeah,
And that's what you're focusing on now, right?
that is what I'm focusing on now, as well as doing my own work. I decided a few years ago to start writing novels, and I just finished my third. What I'm going to do with them, God only knows, but I'm having fun.
Good. And last of my questions, before we go to fan questions, so I've mentioned I personally want to run a reboot of Angela Anaconda, but I understand you're the creator of the show, want to respect your creation. If the powers that be would decide to bring it back, would you want to come back? Would you be okay passing the torch? Would you want
If you want to get those powers, if you can get those powers to be to budge, God bless you. Whatever you can get, whatever you can do, that would be awesome. You have my full support. I would love to participate, but if that wasn't desired, then I would. You know, I think that that yours are absolutely worthy hands. You know, to pass the torch to. That is for sure.
Thank you.
I can't believe how much of an aficionado. I think you know more about Angela Anaconda than I do.
I seriously doubt that. Thank you. And
Nikki loves you.
Oh, that's good. Hey, means you're a good person.
Yeah,
Nikki.
that's a telltale.
Thank you. Oh. And now we're going to get into the fan questions.
Okay.
So, multiple fans had a bunch of people ask the same question. So, there's a couple of them from multiple fans. There's a couple individual ones. I took the best ones. Which of the characters specifically, if any, were directly inspired from your life?
Well, Angela was directly inspired from my immediate life. As I said, she was a very autobiographical character. There was somebody that I knew who was much older, whose name was Nanette, and I thought that she was very Nanette-like, and so that's where that popped into my head. But I certainly, when I was growing up, had a certain envy for, there was a girl named Donna Cappizzoli in my kindergarten class, and she wasn't quite an Annette figure, but I highly resented that, where I would come to school with a giant grocery store brown paper bag with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and wax paper in the bottom of it floating around. That would be my lunch from home. Donna Cappizzoli would come with a beautiful little lunchbox, and inside would be a flying saucer pressed sandwich with cheese and ham and whatever. I was like, this is not fair. No way. What's more, my paintings were a disaster. They were a muddy mess by the end of the day because I just did not have any talent. I couldn't do a perfect lollipop tree. When I went to do the rays of the sun, they would somehow collapse at 6 o'clock, so it would be pressing against the circle. And I would just kind of paint over them. Donna Cappizzoli, perfect. The little birds in the sky, the smoke coming from the chimney, the house was perfect, everything was in proportion. And in fact, I was so horrified by my own painting efforts that I read on my report card, which I found in the attic years later, Joanna continues to get along well with the other children in the class, but she still denies authorship of her paintings. So what would happen is the teacher would roll up my painting, because she'd get sick of me just making a muddy mess, and hand it to me at the end of the class, and I would deny that I had anything to do with it. So,
speaking of characters, we talked about this earlier, if you're comfortable sharing. Gordy Reinhardt, as one of my fans pointed out, was not in the first few episodes. And that was...
Well, Gordy came to me a little bit later on. And it was while I was writing some kind of premise. He popped in there. And I felt very strongly that he was a really important and good addition to the team. Because I certainly wanted to show a range of characters, all different kinds, and somebody that each kid watching could relate to. And it's funny, I had rather a debate about the inclusion of Gordy with various producers and people working with me on the show because of the fact that he was coming in after the first couple of episodes were already done, or the script's already completed. But that was a battle that I did choose. I fought hard for Gordy, and thank God.
Thank God, indeed, because
I prevailed, because I love him.
Good, me too. He's one of my favorite characters.
I love him. I love his inhaler.
I love how sweet he is. I like how he's so nice. He's Angela's best friend. He's always the one helping her out. He's always the one being the voice of reason. He's
a good guy.
He is, and he's got such a good relationship with his dad. He's always so sweet and so helpful and so caring towards anybody else. He definitely, and he never feels like a stereotype. He feels like he's got a feminine side, he's got a masculine side, he's cool with who he is.
Right, and that's, so important to me, is for those kids not to be stereotypes, so that, Gina Lash is the smartest girl in the class. Yes, she's a little bit chubby, but she doesn't care. She's not embarrassed about it. She's just like, here I am, take it or leave it. Okay. Johnny Abadi is not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but he's happy,
That's true.
And, he's actually, when you look at it, he's probably the best adjusted character in the whole thing.
Really? I feel that way about Gordy.
But, and Gordy's dad, who's a tough football coach kind of guy.
Love him.
Loves his son.
I know, he does.
It's so sweet. I love that. And it's, it's different.
I love that. And this one, a different part of the show, the revenge fantasies were such a big part of the show from the get-go. Did you get revenge fantasies as a kid or now?
Yes, I did. I got revenge fantasies and played them through. And I have to say that it did make me feel a little bit better at the end of the day. I try not to indulge in a lot of revenge fantasies as an adult, as a true adult, as an adult instead of a child adult, because I don't think they're particularly healthy for somebody my age. But I still have them. I have to confess.
It's okay.
As long as I don't act on them, okay?
That's
not
good.
Not so bad.
I felt that way about the show.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and this is what a couple fans asked as well. We did touch upon this a little bit. Since sadly, Angela Anaconda has gotten an online backlash over the years, and how do you as a creator feel about the criticism the show has taken, and how do you handle criticism of your work in general?
Well, now that I know what the criticism is, I responded before. I think everybody's entitled to their opinion. There are a lot of shows and various kinds of things that I'm not a particular fan of. There are some that I really, really dislike. And certainly if I wanted to express that, I would feel like I ought to be able to. And, if you're creating something and putting it out there, this is something that kind of goes with the territory, I guess. You need to be able to hear other people out and maybe learn something from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really, really healthy way of handling things.
I try.
I think you succeed. Finally, a question that's come up a couple times from different fans. Do you have a favorite character, episode, running joke, line?
I love the words to the Angela song, which I wrote, and I think it kind of sums it up. I do love the episode with, is it Mary Jo? The saintly girl?
Oh, that's Josephine Praline.
Josephine Praline, I love that episode where she, she is seen as resurrecting a dead bird, and then gone to for all kinds of miracles and what have you. I just think it's funny because I had a Catholic school upbringing and there was so much nonsense. I just thought.
I actually think that comes through in the show too.
Yeah. And I love Josephine Praline. See, she could be gay.
Oh, she totally could, because I've come across a lot of queer girls who admitted to being super religious in their youth.
Yeah.
But she could.
There you have it.
My opinions, Angela, Nanette, Josephine, and of course Gordy.
Yeah.
Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, could be. We don't know about January and.
No, we don't. I feel like they could, maybe they'd experiment in college once or twice.
Could be.
Could be fun to explore. Adult Angela Anaconda, college age. Always room for character development and different opinions. This one's from Amy Redwood. Were there any ideas you had for the show that went unexplored?
I feel like we did 165 episodes or something like that. I feel like we could have done another 165. There was nothing specific that I wanted to explore, but certainly ideas kept coming. It was like a creative assembly line. It was the kind of show that more or less wrote itself. The premise was very user friendly. Could have kept going on, but nothing specific.
And this one's from Ed Chi, who was a prop designer on the show, really great guy. What were your impressions on working with Core Digital Pictures?
I didn't have a particularly close association with Core. I think that they did a wonderful job, I really do. And props to the prop designer, because the props were amazing. And that's the first time I've ever used the word prop or props in a sentence 3 times over. But in any event, Core was great. They were great. They did a really good job.
It's good because a lot of artists have passed along to me that they absolutely loved working on Angela.
Yeah, it's fun.
And Nanette's voice actress, Ruby Smith-Mervitz, said the same thing.
Yeah, how nice. That's really nice.
So a lot of people have happy memories of the show, not just the fans.
That makes me glad. Now, are you going to tell anybody what kind of day this is for you?
We're recording this on my birthday, September 25th. So,
Yay.
best birthday ever.
Yay.
Yeah, we're going to celebrate afterwards.
We are.
And there are 3 more questions left from fans, if you're comfortable answering.
Sure.
One is from Starfall. Due to their mutual obsessive rivalry, do Angela and Nanette have crushes on each other?
Yeah, it could be a love-hate thing. I don't know. Honestly, you'd have to ask them.
Good point.
It could evolve that way.
I
I think they're codependent, that's for sure.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. So.
It's not healthy.
Yeah.
My thoughts on that were there's definitely some kind of attraction there, but it's certainly not a healthy one.
Yeah.
Codependent, that's a good word to describe it.
Pretty much.
This one's from Chris. Is there anything you would do differently looking back?
I think that in terms of the spirit of the show, the characters themselves, the animation work that was done, I'm very happy. We had some wonderful writers on the team. I had a little bit of a hard time with the producers, and I feel that things could have gone a little more smoothly in that respect, and that just certain decisions that were made from the business side were not necessarily, for the best advantage of the show. But I'm not an expert. I'm sure everyone did the best that they could. Again, I would prefer to have had a different voice for the main character.
Okay, it's good to know. And the final question, this is from Pop Culture Potato. We touched a little bit upon this earlier. How would you imagine Angela Anaconda as an adult?
I kind of see her as exactly the way she was as Angela Anaconda on the show, just a little bit bigger. I think she would have a change of outfit. That's about it. I think she'd still be a curmudgeon in her way. I think she'd still be mischievous in her way. I think she would still rectify the disparities of social elitism or classism or whatever you want to call it, by having fun with it rather than being, put down or put off or in any way prevented from being herself by it. I think she would be awesome. I think she'd be fierce.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And yeah. Those are generally all the official questions. That's it. So
Okay.
We could continue on and on, but I definitely don't want to take up too much of your time.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much to you. I just can't tell you how much I appreciate your enthusiasm and your interest and how well you have studied the material and appreciated and understood it. It just,
Thank you.
it really, really means a lot when you work on something and you care about something and somebody comes out of the blue years later and says, hey, I've been paying attention the whole time. It's very, very nice, really nice. You're great. And
Thank you.
And I want to say thank you so much to
This goes for you guys too, by the way.
to all my fans, all of Angela's fans, I should say. And Angela would kill me if I called you my fans. They're her fans.
She totally would.
I really do appreciate you, and even to those guys who have questions or problems or don't find that the show is suited just for them. Keep paying attention. Keep expressing yourself. Keep your voices out there, and be true to you.
Thank you again.
See you later when you see me.
See you later when you see me.